Welcome to Canadian History X. This is the first video we're putting up for this channel. It's a brand new channel all about Canadian history, and the video we're starting off with is about a man named Sprague Cleghorn. Now, he's a Hall of Fame NHL hockey player, but chances are you've never heard of him. He actually finished his playing days way back in the 1920s. He was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1958, and he died in 1956. But during his time, he was probably the first offensive defenseman. He was a mentor to Eddie Shore, who was then a mentor to others. I mean, you go from Sprague Cleghorn to Eddie Shore to Bobby Orr to Ray Bourque, just a line. But he's not well known these days, but he was very well known back in the day. Probably one of the biggest stars of the early NHL, and also one of the most vicious players. In fact, you know about the Lady Byng Trophy, and the Lady Byng Trophy exists because of Cleghorn. Well, you know what, I could tell you why, but instead, why don't you just enjoy the video and find out a little bit more about the NHL star, Sprague Cleghorn. The NHL has had its fair share of tough individuals, including the legendary Broad Street Bullies of the 1970s, but few were as tough or as vicious as Sprague Cleghorn. The average hockey fan may not know who Cleghorn was, even though he is in the Hockey Hall of Fame, but he had a large impact on the early NHL and was one of its greatest players. Born in 1890 in Montreal, Cleghorn played for a variety of junior and amateur hockey teams until 1909, when he joined the New York Wanderers of the United States Amateur Hockey Association. He would have an immediate impact, scoring 7 goals in 8 games. In 1910, he switched to the National Hockey Association, the precursor to the National Hockey League, where he played for the Renfrew Creamery Kings with his brother Odie. Playing as a defenseman, he had 5 goals in 12 games. As a defenseman, he enjoyed joining the rush, and could be considered the first offensive defenseman in NHL history. For the next 6 seasons playing for the Montreal Wanderers, he would have 112 points in 103 games. In 1918-19, he joined the Ottawa Senators, registering 13 points in 18 games with the team. He would help lead the Ottawa Senators to the Stanley Cup. In 1920, in an attempt to even the playing field in the league, he was transferred by the NHL to the Hamilton Tigers. Now, he refused to report, and the Senators asked the league if he could be brought back. The league responded by threatening to throw Ottawa out if they did such a thing, and Cleghorn joined the Toronto St. Patricks. 1 year later, he returned to Ottawa and won the 1921 Stanley Cup. Again, transferred to the Hamilton, he refused to report and would join the Montreal Canadiens for the 1921-22 NHL season. Playing with his brother Odie, he had 26 points in 24 games and was named captain. He would win another Stanley Cup with them in 1923-24. Cleghorn's style of play could be described as angry. In 1923, he struck Senators defenseman Lyle Hitchman in the head with a stick and was charged with aggravated assault. His own team suspended him after the incident and fined him. In another incident, he injured 3 players on the Senators team, and Ottawa now attempted to have him removed from the league. One referee called him a disgrace to the game. Once, when Bill Bridge gave Cleghorn a knee, elbow, and stick, Cleghorn waited, and when the time was right, gave Bridge a hit that required 50 stitches. In a later game, after taunting Cleghorn, Ace Bailey was crushed with a hit. Bridge came up to him and said, "Stay down, you crazy bastard. Do you want to get killed?" Cleghorn once said he was involved in at least 50 incidents that sent another player off the ice in a stretcher. According to legend, Evelyn Byng was so disturbed by Cleghorn's playing style that she donated the Lady Byng Trophy to the NHL in 1924 to encourage sportsmanlike playing. In 1924-25, he was sold to the Boston Bruins for $5,000, where he played the final 3 seasons of his career. While there, he would serve as a mentor to another tough player and future Hall of Famer, Eddie Shore. In his NHL career, he would have 83 goals and 55 assists for 138 points in 259 games. Following his career, he would coach various teams briefly, including the Montreal Maroons in 1931-32, winning 19 games and losing 22. Married 3 times, his marriages were sometimes rocky. In 1918, he was arrested for beating his first wife with a crutch. His wife would divorce him in 1921 after finding him with another woman. He would remarry twice, with his 3rd wife predeceasing him. Cleghorn was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1958, 2 years after he passed away from his injuries after being hit by a car in Montreal. Speaking of Cleghorn, King Clancy once said, "Cleghorn was a terrible man to play against. A terrific stick handler, a master of the butt end, and tough. Holy Jesus, was he tough.